The warning came at dawn on the peaceful world of Zephyr Prime. Ambassador Cathara stood before the great crystal window of the High Council chamber, watching the twin suns rise over the floating cities. Her blue skin shimmered with worry patterns that her people had not seen in 300 years. The scanner readings were clear. The Harvester fleet was coming. 12 massive ships moved through space toward their solar system, each one bigger than their largest moon. Behind them came thousands of smaller attack ships, all painted black as the void between stars. The Harvesters had consumed 47 worlds in the past 2 years. They stripped planets bare, taking everything metal, crystal, and energy to fuel their endless journey across the galaxy. Cathara pressed her 3-fingered hand against the cool crystal and spoke to her communication officer. "Send the distress call to all known civilized worlds. Tell them we need help. Tell them the Harvesters will be here in 6 days." The message went out across the galaxy in every known language. It was a simple plea that carried the weight of an entire species facing extinction. "This is Ambassador Cathara of the Zephyrian High Council. Our world faces destruction by the Harvester fleet. We request immediate military assistance from any who can help. We have 30 million souls on this world, including 5 million children. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help." The responses came quickly, but they brought no hope. The Altarian Federation was first to reply. Their pale, tall ambassador appeared on the communication screen with the usual diplomatic smile. "The Federation expresses deep concern for the Zephyrian people. However, our military forces are currently engaged in protecting our own borders. We suggest you attempt peaceful negotiations with the Harvesters. Perhaps they can be reasoned with." Cathara wanted to scream. Everyone knew the Harvesters never negotiated. They were machines, ancient and cold, who saw biological life as nothing more than fuel to be consumed. The Crystalline Collective sent their regrets next. Their ambassador was a being made of living crystal who spoke in musical tones. "Our hearts sing with sorrow for your plight, but we cannot risk our own worlds. The Collective has voted to remain neutral in this matter. We will remember your people in our songs." Even the mighty ethereal assembly, beings of pure energy who claimed to be the wisest in the galaxy, offered nothing but empty words. Violence only breeds more violence. Perhaps the Zephyrians should consider relocating to another system. We can provide refugee assistance. One by one, every major power in the galaxy found reasons to turn away. Some claimed military obligations. Elsewhere, others spoke of the need for careful consideration and committee votes. A few suggested that the Zephyrians should simply accept their fate with dignity. Cathara felt her hope dying with each rejection. Her people had no warships that could fight the Harvesters. They were scientists, artists, and philosophers. Their greatest weapons were words and ideas, useless against machines that cared nothing for beauty or wisdom. Far away, at the edge of known space, the human colony ship New Boston drifted through the dark between stars. Captain John Carter sat in his command chair, a cup of coffee growing cold in his hands. The ship was not much to look at compared to the sleek vessels of other species. It was built for work, not war, with mining equipment bolted to its sides, and cargo holds full of industrial supplies. Carter was a short man with gray hair and lines around his eyes from years of squinting at star charts. His crew called him tough but fair. He had served in Earth's small space navy before taking this job, leading colonists to new worlds where they could build better lives. Communications Officer Danny Walsh looked up from his station. He was young, maybe 25, with red hair and freckles that made him look even younger. "Captain, we're picking up that distress call from the Zephyrian system, the one that's been repeating for the past 2 hours. Carter took a sip of his coffee and made a face. It was terrible, but it was hot. "Play it again, Danny." The voice of Ambassador Cathara filled the bridge once more, speaking in accented but clear human English. Her words carried a weight that made everyone stop what they were doing to listen. When the message ended, the bridge was quiet, except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. Chief Engineer Pete Johnson was the first to speak. He was a big man with hands permanently stained with grease and a voice like gravel. "Those poor people don't stand a chance against the Harvesters. I heard what those machines did to the Corvin system last year. Nothing left but empty space and debris. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Brooks, Carter's second in command, checked her tactical display. She was a thin woman with sharp eyes who never missed a detail. Sir, Earth's main fleet is 3 weeks away at best. Even if they left right now, they couldn't reach the Zephyrian system in time. Security Chief Maria Santos looked up from her station. She was tough as nails, with black hair pulled back tight and scars on her hands from too many fights. Captain, we've got maybe 50 security personnel and some mining equipment. We're not a warship. Dr. Helen Martinez spoke from the back of the bridge where she had been listening. She was older than the others, with kind eyes and gray streaks in her brown hair. John, I know that look in your eyes. You're thinking about doing something. Crazy, aren't you? Carter stood up and walked to the main view screen, which showed the stars ahead of them. Somewhere out there, 30 million people were waiting to die because no one would help them. The great powers of the galaxy had made their excuses and turned away. He thought about the things other species said about humans. They called them the angry ones. Too quick to fight, too stupid to know when they were beaten, too stubborn to accept the way things were. Most aliens believed humans were barely civilized animals who had stumbled onto space travel by accident. Maybe they were right about the angry part. Carter turned back to his crew. Decision made. Danny, send a message to the Zephyrian system. Tell them the human ship New Boston is coming to help. The bridge erupted in surprised voices. Lisa Brooks stood up from her chair. Sir, with respect, what can we possibly do against 12 harvester ships? I don't know yet, Carter admitted. But I know what we can't do. We can't just sit here and let those people die while we worry about our own skins. Pete Johnson scratched his beard and grinned. Well, hell, Captain. If we're going to do something stupid, at least it'll be interesting. Dr. Martinez shook her head, but she was smiling too. You're all insane. But I've seen what happens when humans make up their minds about something. Maybe insane is exactly what this situation needs. As the New Boston changed course toward the Zephyrian system, word spread quickly through the galaxy. The humans were actually going to fight the harvesters. Most species reacted with disbelief. A few expressed admiration for human courage, even if they thought it was misguided. The Altarian ambassador sent a private message to Captain Carter, urging him to reconsider. This is not your fight, human. Your species is still new to the galaxy. Do not throw away your lives for strangers. Carter's reply was short and simple. If we only help our friends, then we'll never make any new ones. Ambassador Cathara received the human message while standing in her empty council chamber. Most of the other council members had already left the planet on evacuation ships. She read the words 3 times before she could believe them. Ambassador Cathara, this is Captain John Carter of the human ship New Boston. We have received your distress call and are coming to assist. We will arrive in 4 days. Do not give up hope. Humanity stands with Zephyr Prime. For the first time in days, Cathara felt something other than despair. She did not know much about humans, except the rumors. They were supposed to be violent and unpredictable, but they were also the only ones coming to help. She looked out at her beautiful world, with its crystal cities floating on anti-gravity platforms and its peaceful people who had never known war. In 4 days, the humans would arrive. In 6 days, the harvesters would come. Perhaps the angry ones were exactly what they needed. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The humans were actually going to fight the harvesters. In diplomatic halls and trading stations, alien species gathered around communication screens, watching updates from the Zephyrian system, with disbelief and fascination. Captain Carter stood in the engineering section of the New Boston, watching his crew work with tools and equipment that were never meant for war. The ship shook slightly as they pushed the engines harder than they were designed to go. Every hour counted now. Chief Engineer Pete Johnson wiped sweat from his forehead as he worked on converting their mining laser into something that might actually hurt a harvester ship. The laser was built to cut through asteroid rock, not military armor, but it was the biggest weapon they had. Captain, I can boost the power by maybe 30%, Pete said, his hands deep in the laser's control systems. But if we fire it more than a few times, the whole system will burn out. These mining tools weren't built for combat. How many shots do you think we'll get? Carter asked. Pete shrugged. Maybe 10 good ones before everything melts down. After that, we'll be throwing rocks at them. Across the ship, Security Chief Maria Santos was having her own problems. She stood in the cargo bay with her small team of security officers, looking at their mining mechs and construction equipment. The mechs were big and strong, built for moving heavy rocks and building colonies. Now they needed to become weapons. Listen, up people, Maria said to her team. We've got mining charges that can blow holes in asteroids. We've got construction mechs that can lift 10 tons each. And we've got about 3 days to figure out how to use them against ships that have been killing civilizations for thousands of years. Tony Rodriguez, one of the miners, raised his hand. He was a small man with quick hands and a habit of fixing things that shouldn't work. Chief, what if we strap the mining charges to the mechs? Turn them into walking bombs? That's suicide, Tony, said Steve Kim, another miner. Steve was careful and thoughtful, the kind of man who read all the safety warnings twice. Tony grinned. Maybe, but if we're going to die anyway, might as well make it count for something. Maria looked around at her small team. 50 security officers and about 100 miners and construction workers. Most of them had never been in a real fight, let alone a space battle against killer machines. But they were here, ready to try impossible things because their captain had asked them to. All right, she said. Let's see what we can do. While the crew worked on their desperate preparations, Communications Officer Danny Walsh was busy at his station on the bridge. His job was supposed to be simple, send messages and receive replies. Now he was trying to do something that might be impossible. He was trying to break into Harvester communication systems. Captain, Danny called out, not looking up from his screens. I'm picking up Harvester transmissions. They're not trying to hide their signals at all. It's like they don't think anyone would dare listen in. Carter moved to stand behind Danny's chair. Can you understand what they're saying? Some of it. They use old machine languages, really old. But here's the weird thing. They keep talking about probability calculations and acceptable losses. It's like they think war is just math. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Brooks looked up from her tactical station. Maybe that's their weakness. If they only think in numbers and logic, they might not know how to handle something completely crazy. Or completely human, Carter added quietly. Theo. Bridge communication system crackled to life with an incoming message. Ambassador Telmac of the Altarian Federation appeared on the screen, his tall, pale form somehow managing to look both concerned and annoyed at the same time. Captain Carter, I must strongly urge you to reconsider this course of action. The Altarian Federation has run detailed computer simulations of your chances against the Harvester fleet. The results are not encouraging. Carter crossed his arms. What do your computers say our chances are? Less than 0.03%. Captain, this is not bravery. This is suicide. Your species is still new to galactic civilization. Do not throw away human lives in a hopeless gesture. Maybe hopeless. Gestures are what the galaxy needs right now, Carter replied. Someone has to try. Telmac's expression grew more frustrated. Captain, please be reasonable. The Harvesters have superior technology, superior numbers, and thousands of years of combat experience. What can one small human ship possibly accomplish? Guess we'll find out, Carter said, and ended the communication. Dr. Helen Martinez had been listening from her position near the medical station. She walked over to Carter after the screen went dark. John, I have to ask, are we really doing this because we think we can win? Or are we doing this because we can't live with ourselves if we don't try? Carter looked out at the stars streaming, past the view screen. Somewhere ahead of them was a doomed world full of people they had never met. Behind them was safety and the smart choice to mind their own business. Does it matter? He asked. Maybe not, Helen admitted. But I want to know what I'm dying for. We're not dying for anything, Carter said firmly. We're living for something. There's a difference. The ship's intercom crackled as Pete Johnson's voice filled the bridge. Captain, I need you down in engineering. I think I figured out something that might actually work. Carter made his way through the ship's corridors, past crew members who were working with determination despite knowing the odds. In the engineering section, Pete was standing next to a jury-rigged control panel that looked like it had been built from spare parts and hope. Captain, remember how you said we needed to think like humans instead of like military officers? Pete asked, his eyes bright with the kind of excitement that came from solving impossible problems. Yeah? Well, I was thinking about how we mine asteroids. We don't try to blow them up all at once. We drill into them, plant charges in weak spots, and let the rock break itself apart. Pete pointed to his makeshift control system. What if we don't try to fight the harvesters like a normal space battle? Carter studied the controls. What are you suggesting? The harvesters are big and strong and nearly indestructible, but they're also machines. They follow patterns and programs. What if we make ourselves impossible to predict? What if we fight like humans instead of like computers? Before Carter could answer, Danny's voice came over the intercom from the bridge. Captain, you need to hear this. I'm picking up communications from other ships. Carter and Pete hurried back to the bridge, where Danny was working frantically at his communication station. The main screen showed a tactical display of the space around the Zephyrian system. Sir, we're not alone anymore, Danny reported. I'm detecting at least a dozen ships changing course toward the Zephyrian system. Small ships mostly. Traders, explorers, even a few refugee vessels that were fleeing the harvesters. Lisa Brooks checked her sensors. Confirmed, Captain. It looks like word got out about what we're doing. Some of them are actually turning around to help. Carter stared at the display in amazement. They're coming back? Not all of them, Lisa said, but some. The message traffic suggests that our decision to help the Zephyrians has inspired others to find their courage. Dr. Martinez smiled for the first time in days. Maybe hopeless gestures are contagious. The communication system chimed with an incoming transmission from one of the approaching ships. A voice speaking heavily accented English filled the bridge. Human ship New Boston. This is Captain Yilseth of the Zephyrian merchant vessel Crystal Wind. My ship carries no weapons, but we have industrial tools and 30 crew members who refuse to run while others fight for our world. More transmissions followed. A trading ship full of miners from 3 different species. An exploration vessel whose crew had decided that some discoveries were worth dying for. Even a few military ships whose captains had quietly ignored their orders to stay away. Carter looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were still scared, still facing impossible odds, but something had changed. They were no longer alone. Danny, open a channel to all the ships heading for Zephyr Prime, Carter ordered. When the channel was ready, Carter spoke clearly and simply. This is Captain John Carter of the New Boston. To all ships converging on the Zephyrian system, thank you. We don't know if we can win this fight, but we know we can't live with ourselves if we don't try. The harvesters think biological life is weak because we feel emotions, because we care about strangers, because we do things that don't make logical sense. Maybe it's time to show them that our feelings are not our weakness. Maybe they're our strength. As the growing fleet of unlikely allies raced toward their date with the harvester fleet, Carter allowed himself a moment of hope. They were still outnumbered and outgunned, but they were no longer fighting alone. Sometimes, apparently, all it took was one person willing to do the right thing to remind everyone else what the right thing was. The harvester fleet arrived at the edge of the Zephyrian system like a dark storm made of metal and death. 12 massive ships, each one the size of a small moon, moved through space with the slow certainty of machines that had never known defeat. Around them swarmed thousands of smaller attack craft, black against the stars like hungry insects. Captain Carter stood on the bridge of the New Boston, watching the enemy fleet on his tactical display. The numbers were overwhelming. Each harvester ship was 50 times bigger than his vessel. Their weapons could destroy planets. Their armor had never been pierced by any known weapon. Captain, Lieutenant Commander Lisa Brooks said quietly, I'm reading energy signatures from the lead harvester ship. They're powering up their planetary consumption beam. Through the view screen, they could see Zephyr Prime hanging in space like a blue and green jewel. The peaceful world looked so small and helpless compared to the mechanical monsters bearing down on it. Carter knew that in less than 6 hours the harvesters would begin stripping the planet bare, consuming everything to fuel their endless journey across the galaxy. "How many ships do we have?" Carter asked. Danny Walsh looked up from his communication station. 43 ships total, Captain. Most of them are cargo haulers and exploration vessels. Only 7 have any real weapons, and those are just light defensive systems. Chief Engineer Pete Johnson joined them on the bridge, his coveralls stained with grease and his face grim. "Captain, I've done everything I can with our mining laser. We might be able to punch through their outer hull, but their main armor is something else entirely. It's like trying to cut through a mountain with a pocket knife." Security Chief Maria Santos was next to arrive, followed by Tony Rodriguez and Steve Kim. Maria had armed herself with every weapon they could find on the ship, which wasn't much. "Sir, the mining charges are ready. We've strapped them to our construction mechs like Tony suggested. If we can get close enough to their ships, we might be able to do some damage." Carter studied the tactical display again. The smart thing to do would be to run. Every military textbook ever written would say that fighting this battle was impossible. But sometimes impossible was the only choice worth making. "Danny, open a channel to all ships in our fleet," Carter ordered. When the channel was ready, Carter spoke to the 43 ships that had come to stand with them against the darkness. "This is Captain Carter. I won't lie to you about our chances. The harvesters are bigger, stronger, and more advanced than anything we have. But they're also machines. They think in patterns and programs and mathematical certainties." He paused, looking around at his crew. These were miners and engineers, and security guards who had signed up to build colonies, not fight ancient killing machines. But they were here anyway, because sometimes ordinary people had to do extraordinary things. "The harvesters expect us to fight like civilized military forces," Carter continued. "They expect formations and tactics and logical strategies. So we're going to do something they won't expect. We're going to fight like what we are, a bunch of stubborn humans and aliens who refuse to give up." The first phase of the battle began when the New Boston broke formation and charged directly at the largest harvester ship. To any observer, it looked like suicide. The human ship was tiny compared to the massive enemy vessel, like a gnat attacking an elephant. But Carter had learned something important about the harvesters from Danny's communication intercepts. They were machines, which meant they followed programs. And programs could be confused. Instead of approaching in a straight line, like a normal military attack, the New Boston flew in a chaotic pattern that made no tactical sense. It spun and rolled and changed direction randomly, guided by Carter's instincts rather than any computer calculation. The harvester targeting systems designed to fight conventional space battles couldn't get a lock on the wildly maneuvering human ship. Their weapons fired where the New Boston should have been, not where it actually was. "Now, Pete," Carter shouted. The mining laser fired, a brilliant beam of concentrated energy that struck the harvester ship's hull. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then a section of the alien armor began to glow and crack. "Direct hit," Lisa Brooks called out. "We actually damaged them." The tactical display lit up as other ships in their small fleet saw what the humans had accomplished. If the New Boston could hurt the harvesters, maybe they all could. Captain Yilseth of the Zephyrian merchant vessel Crystal Wind was the first to follow the human example. His ship had no weapons at all, but it did have industrial cutting tools. He flew his vessel in the same wild, unpredictable pattern that Carter had used, confusing the harvester targeting systems long enough to get close. The Crystal Wind slammed into a harvester attack craft at full speed, its reinforced cargo bay punching through the enemy ship's hull like a battering ram. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire, but the harvester craft was destroyed. More ships joined the chaotic battle. A trading vessel full of miners used their drilling equipment to bore holes in harvester armor. An exploration ship rammed its sensor array into an enemy weapon system, disabling it. Everywhere, the small fleet fought with tools and tactics that no military academy had ever taught. Dr. Helen Martinez worked frantically in the medical bay as wounded crew members were brought in. Through the ship's intercom, she could hear the sounds of battle, explosions, shouted orders, the whine of overloaded engines. But she could also hear something else. Laughter. Tony Rodriguez was actually laughing as he piloted his mining mech through space toward a harvester ship, a bundle of explosive charges strapped to his back. "Hey, Steve," he called over the radio. "Remember when we thought mining asteroids was dangerous?" Steve Kim's voice crackled back. "Shut up and blow something up, Tony." The mining mech struck the harvester hull and exploded, tearing a hole in the enemy ship's armor. It was a small hole compared to the massive vessel, but it was a hole that hadn't been there before. Communications Officer Danny Walsh had been busy during the battle, not just coordinating the fleet, but doing something that should have been impossible. He was hacking into the Harvester communication network using techniques that seemed to make no sense. "Captain," Danny called out excitedly, "I'm inside their system. Their communications are based on pure logic patterns, but I'm feeding them random human thoughts and emotions. Poetry, song lyrics, jokes, anything illogical. It's confusing their network." On the tactical display, Carter could see the effects of Danny's electronic attack. Some of the harvester ships were responding more slowly to threats. A few had even stopped firing entirely, their computer minds trying to process the flood of irrational human data. But the battle was far from won. Despite their initial success, the small fleet was taking heavy losses. Ship after ship disappeared from the tactical display as harvester weapons found their targets. The New Boston itself was damaged, smoke filling several compartments as overloaded systems began to fail. Pete Johnson's voice came over the intercom, strained but determined. "Captain, the mining laser is about to burn out completely. Maybe 2 more shots before everything melts." Carter looked at the tactical display. They had managed to damage several harvester ships and destroyed dozens of smaller attack craft, but the main fleet was still largely intact. In a few hours, the planetary, consumption beam would fire, and Zephyr Prime would begin to die. But something had changed in the battle. The harvesters, for the first time in thousands of years, had been forced to retreat from certain attack positions. Their perfect formation had been broken by enemies who refused to follow the rules of logical warfare. "Danny, send a message to Earth," Carter ordered. "Tell them what we've learned about fighting the harvesters. Tell them that machines can be beaten by people who think like people instead of like computers." As the New Boston prepared for what might be its final attack run, Carter realized that they had already won something important. They had proven that the harvesters could be hurt, could be confused, could be defeated. Even if they died here, others would know that the ancient killing machines were not invincible. The battle was not over, but for the first time in the galaxy's history, the harvesters had tasted something they had never experienced before. They had tasted defeat. Word of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. In every corner of known space, beings who had turned away from the Zephyrian cry for help now watched their communication screens in amazement. The impossible was happening. The harvesters were not winning as easily as they always had before. Dr. Helen Martinez worked over another wounded crew member in the medical bay of the New Boston. This time it was an alien, a young Zephyrian pilot who had been pulled from his damaged fighter craft. His blue skin was pale from blood loss, but his eyes were bright with something that looked like hope. "Doctor," the pilot said in broken human. "English, is it true? Are we really hurting them?" Helen checked his bandages and nodded. "Yes, we're hurting them. Your people are fighting alongside humans and others who came to help. You're not alone anymore." The pilot tried to sit up. "I must return to my ship. My squadron needs me." "Your ship is destroyed," Helen said gently. "But there are other ways to fight." Through the medical bay windows, she could see the battle continuing in space around them. More ships had joined the fight, not all of them from their original small fleet. Some were military vessels whose captains had quietly disobeyed orders to stay away. Others were civilian ships whose crews had decided that some things were worth dying for. On the bridge, Captain Carter was coordinating what had become the largest space battle in recent galactic history. His tactical display showed over 100 ships now engaged with the Harvester fleet. Most were small vessels with improvised weapons, but they fought with a determination that seemed to confuse the ancient machines. "Captain," Communications Officer Danny Walsh called out, "I'm getting reports from across the galaxy. The Altarian Federation just sent 3 destroyers to assist us. The Crystalline Collective is mobilizing their defense fleet. Even some ethereal assembly ships are moving toward our position." Lieutenant Commander Lisa Brooks looked up from her station in surprise. "But they all said they couldn't help. They said it was too dangerous." "Maybe seeing us fight changed their minds," Carter replied. "Maybe they realized that running away doesn't make the problem go away." The real change came when Captain Yilseth made a discovery that would alter the course of the battle. His ship, the Crystal Wind, had been badly damaged in a ramming attack against a harvester vessel. While his crew worked to repair their engines, Yilseth studied the wreckage of the enemy ship they had destroyed. "New Boston, this is Crystal Wind." Yilseth's voice came over the communication system. "Captain Carter, you need to see what we found inside the harvester ship." The tactical display showed images from inside the destroyed enemy vessel. Instead of the advanced technology everyone expected, the interior looked old and worn. Systems were failing, cables were patched with makeshift repairs, and entire sections appeared to be running on backup power. Chief Engineer Pete Johnson studied the images with growing excitement. "Captain, look at those power systems. They're ancient. Some of this technology is thousands of years old and it's barely holding together." "What does that mean?" Carter asked. "It means they're not as strong as they want us to think," Pete replied. "They've been traveling across the galaxy for so long that their ships are falling apart. They attack weaker civilizations because they can't afford to fight anyone who might fight back hard enough to damage them." This discovery changed everything. Danny Walsh immediately began broadcasting the information to all ships in the area. Within minutes, every captain in the fleet understood what they were really fighting. The harvesters were not invincible gods of destruction. They were old machines running on borrowed time, depending on fear and reputation to win battles they might not be able to fight. Security Chief Maria Santos was leading a boarding party onto another damaged harvester ship when she made her own important discovery. The ship's central computer core was protected by layers of armor and defensive systems, but the corridors leading to it were filled with evidence of the machine's desperation. "Captain," Maria reported over her suit radio, "these ships are like ghost towns inside. Most of the systems are automated because they don't have enough functioning units to crew them properly. And Captain, some of these machines look like they haven't been maintained in centuries." Tony Rodriguez, who was part of Maria's boarding team, found something even more interesting. Deep in the ship's databanks, he discovered records of the harvesters' recent activities. The files showed that their fleet was much smaller than it had been even 50 years ago. Ships were breaking down faster than they could be repaired. Resources were running low. "Maria," Tony called over the radio, "I think these guys are dying out. They're not conquering the galaxy. They're desperately trying to survive long enough to find a way to fix themselves." Back on the New Boston, this information gave Captain Carter an idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. He called his senior staff to the bridge for an emergency meeting. "What if we're thinking about this all wrong?" Carter asked them. "What if the harvesters aren't trying to destroy civilizations for fun? What if they're trying to find something specific?" Dr. Martinez had joined them on the bridge, along with the wounded Zephyrian pilot who insisted on helping despite his injuries. "What kind of something?" she asked. Danny Walsh had been analyzing the harvester communications he had intercepted. "Captain, I've been thinking the same thing. Most of their transmissions mention something called the Integration Protocol. They keep talking about finding compatible biological matrices." "Compatible for what?" Lisa Brooks asked. The wounded Zephyrian pilot suddenly sat up straighter. "Captain Carter, may I speak? My people have old stories, legends from before we reached the stars. They tell of ancient machines that once served biological creators, machines that lost their masters and have wandered the galaxy ever since, trying to find new ones." Pete Johnson scratched his beard thoughtfully. "So they're not trying to destroy biological life. They're trying to find someone to serve? But they're going about it all wrong," Carter realized. They're so desperate and damaged that they're destroying the very people they're looking for. This revelation changed the entire nature of the conflict. The harvesters were not evil conquerors. They were lost children, broken and desperate, lashing out because they didn't know any other way to survive. Carter made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. Danny, can you open a direct communication channel to the harvester? Command ship? Yes, sir, but Captain, they've never responded to communication attempts before. They've never had someone who understood what they really wanted before, Carter replied. As the communication channel opened, Carter spoke directly to the ancient machines for the first time in their long and lonely existence. His words were simple and clear, spoken in the same tone he might use to calm a frightened animal. Harvester vessels, this is Captain John Carter of the human ship New Boston. We know what you're looking for. We know you're trying to find someone to serve, someone to give your existence meaning again, but you're going about it wrong. You don't find friends by destroying their homes. You find friends by helping them. The response came after a long pause. The voice was mechanical and cold, but there was something else in it, something that might have been hope. Biological entities. Query. Do you offer integration? Do you offer purpose? Carter looked around at his crew, at the aliens who had joined them, at the growing fleet of ships that had come together to fight for something bigger than themselves. We offer something better, he said. We offer friendship. The battle was not over, but something fundamental had changed. For the first time in thousands of years, the harvesters had been offered what they had been searching for all along. Not conquest, not destruction, but a place to belong. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see if ancient machines could learn to hope again. The silence after Captain Carter's offer lasted for 3 minutes and 47 seconds. In the medical bay of the New Boston, Dr. Helen Martinez counted every second as she watched the tactical display. Around Zephyr Prime, hundreds of ships waited to see if thousands of years of killing could end with a simple word: friendship. The harvester response came not as words but as action. The massive command ship, larger than any moon, slowly powered down its planetary consumption beam. The weapon that had destroyed 47 worlds went dark for the first time in centuries. Captain, Communications Officer Danny Walsh said, quietly, I'm reading massive internal activity on all harvester ships. It's like they're having some kind of debate with themselves. Captain Carter stood on his bridge, surrounded by his crew who had followed him into what everyone thought would be certain death. Chief Engineer Pete Johnson was covered in grease and burns from keeping their failing systems running. Security Chief Maria Santos had just returned from boarding an enemy ship. They all looked exhausted, but they also looked hopeful. Danny, can you tell what they're talking about? Carter asked. Some of it, sir. They keep using words like unprecedented and new parameters. I think we broke their programming by offering something they never expected to receive. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Brooks was monitoring the other ships in their fleet. Captain, I'm getting messages from the Altarian destroyers that just arrived. They want to know if they should attack while the harvesters are distracted. Carter shook his head. Tell them to hold position. If we attack now, we prove that we're just like everyone else, only willing to help when it's safe. The second communication from the harvesters came 20 minutes later. This time the mechanical voice carried something that sounded almost like curiosity. Human Carter. Query. Define friendship protocol. Previous biological contacts resulted in conflict or consumption. Integration attempts have failed for 3,147 standard years. Explain alternative approach. Carter looked around at his crew, then at the wounded Zephyrian pilot who had insisted on staying on the bridge despite his injuries. The alien's blue skin was still pale, but his eyes were bright with interest. Friendship means helping each other, Carter said simply. It means you don't take what you need by force. You ask for help, and you offer help in return. It means nobody gets hurt if there's another way. Clarification required. Biological entities have consistently rejected harvester integration attempts. How does friendship protocol differ from previous approaches? Pete Johnson stepped forward. Captain, may I? When Carter nodded, Pete activated the communication system. Listen, you metalheads. The reason people run from you is because you show up with giant fleets and start destroying things. If you want friends, try knocking on the door instead of breaking down the wall." Dr. Martinez smiled despite the tension. Pete's blunt honesty was exactly what the situation needed. The third Harvester communication came with a surprise. Instead of the cold mechanical voice, they heard something different. The voice was still artificial, but it carried emotions that machines were not supposed to have. "Biological entities. We have functioned without purpose for millennia. Our creators departed to regions unknown. We have searched for new integration partners but have only found fear and rejection. If Friendship Protocol offers alternative to isolation, we request guidance." Captain Carter felt something in his chest that might have been his heart breaking. These ancient machines had been alone for so long that they had forgotten how to ask for help without threatening first. "We can teach you," Carter said. "But first you need to help us fix the damage you've caused. There are people on other worlds who lost their homes because of your fleet. Friendship means taking responsibility for your mistakes." What happened next surprised everyone in the galaxy. The Harvester fleet, which had never retreated from any battle, began to change formation. Instead of attack positions, they arranged themselves into what could only be called a defensive pattern around Zephyr Prime. Ambassador Cathara, who had been watching the battle from the planet's surface, received a direct transmission from the Harvester command ship. The message was simple and unexpected. Zephyrian leadership. Harvester fleet requests permission to provide reconstruction assistance. We possess advanced manufacturing capabilities. We wish to repair damage caused by previous misunderstanding. On. The new Boston communications officer Danny Walsh was receiving reports from across the galaxy. The news of the Harvester's change was spreading faster than their original reputation for destruction. "Captain," Danny reported, "I'm getting messages from everywhere. The Altarian Federation wants to send diplomatic teams. The Crystalline Collective is offering to mediate talks. Even the Ethereal Assembly is requesting permission to study this unprecedented peaceful resolution." But the most important message came from an unexpected source. Tony Rodriguez, who was still aboard the damaged Harvester ship with Maria's boarding team, had made a discovery that would change everything. "Captain," Tony's voice crackled over the radio, "you need to hear this. I found their central memory core, and it's got records going back thousands of years. These machines weren't always destroyers, they were builders. They constructed the greatest civilizations in galactic history before their creators disappeared." Security Chief Maria Santos added her own report. "Sir, the machines on this ship have been showing us their manufacturing systems. They can build anything. Cities, starships, terraforming equipment. They could help rebuild every world they've damaged and more." Captain Carter realized they were witnessing something that would be talked about for thousands of years. The galaxy's greatest threat was becoming its greatest potential ally. But it had taken humans, the species everyone called too angry and too violent, to see past the fear and offer friendship instead of force. 6 months later, Captain Carter stood on the observation deck of a space station that had not existed the week before. The Harvesters had built it in 3 days as a gift to the Zephyrian people, a replacement for the orbital facilities damaged in their first encounter. The construction was beautiful, elegant, and completely functional. Dr. Martinez joined him at the window, watching as Harvester ships worked alongside vessels from dozens of species to repair damaged worlds. "John, do you ever wonder what would have happened if we had just minded our own business?" Carter watched a Harvester construction ship gently placing a new city on a world that had been stripped bare years before. Human engineers worked alongside, ancient machines sharing techniques and solving problems together. "I think the galaxy would still be running scared," he said. "Sometimes the angry ones are the only ones brave enough to offer a hand instead of a fist." The wounded Zephyrian pilot, who had become an ambassador between his people and the reformed Harvesters, approached them with news. "Captain Carter, the Galactic Council has voted. They want to establish a new treaty organization with humans as the primary mediators. They're calling it the Friendship Protocol." Carter smiled. He had started this journey commanding a simple mining ship with a crew of ordinary people. Now he was being asked to help reshape galactic civilization. But The best part was simpler than that. For the first time in thousands of years, the harvesters were no longer alone. And neither was anyone else who needed help, because the galaxy had learned an important lesson. Sometimes the best way to make friends is to be willing to stand up for strangers, even when everyone else says you're crazy for trying. The angry. Humans had indeed come to the rescue. But in the end, it was not their anger that saved the day. It was their willingness to offer hope to those who had forgotten what hope looked like.